day, more cases nationally overall. We've increasing numbers of cases in vulnerable groups. We have outbreaks in a number of workplace settings. More young people are getting the disease, and there's been a shift in the location of the majority of cases from Dublin to other counties. So we're staying on pause. At the moment, we're doing well in terms of testing, tracking and tracing these clusters. However, as the number of clusters increases, there is a much increased chance that the disease will begin to seed more generally in the community again. This is the biggest risk. Community transmission means we don't know where disease is coming from and we cannot clamp down on the source of infection. It is the biggest risk for older people and those with underlying health conditions in our communities, in healthcare and in other long-term care settings, who are much more vulnerable to the disease. Now is just not the time to relax our efforts. Now is the time to hold firm. The most important thing we can do at this time is to continue to defend ourselves, our loved ones and our communities as best we can against Covid-19. We're at a very delicate position in terms of the virus, and our progress continues to depend on our collective individual actions. We can stall this latest trend in the virus, provided everyone plays their part, by following the vital public health guidance which has stayed consistent. Wash your hands regularly and thoroughly, especially if you've been in and out of other people's homes or businesses. Continue to observe good cough and sneeze etiquette. Maintain social distancing and remember to exercise judgment about where you spend time. If it doesn't look safe, if it doesn't feel safe, it probably isn't. Keep your social interactions to a minimum to limit the number of contacts that you have. Wear face coverings on public transport, in shops and shopping centres, and in all outdoor settings where social distancing is difficult. The Irish people have already shown great willingness to adapt to the wearing of face masks as a proven additional safety measure against the virus, and we're confident they will embrace the new guidance with the same commitment. It is also vitally important that you know the symptoms of Covid-19. If you're feeling unwell, if you've a high temperature, if you've a cough of any description, if you feel short of breath, or if you feel you have had a change in your taste or smell, you need to do two things. Firstly, you need to self-isolate immediately. You can still spread the virus without a formal diagnosis, and you need to ensure you're not putting other people at risk. Secondly, you need to call your GP straight away so that they can arrange testing for you. Remember, if you think you might have COVID and you need to call your GP, these Covid-19 related consultations and all referrals for a test are covered by the HSE and are free. And the test is also free, so please don't hesitate. Contact tracing continues to be a key element of our strategy in terms of containing the virus, and the COVID Tracker app is one of the key tools that will help us to do that. The app ensures that people who use it can be notified quickly and anonymously if they come into close contact with someone who is tested positive for Covid-19. Last week, Ireland achieved a world first in our all-island approach to contact tracing apps. The Irish Covid-19 Tracker app will now be compatible with Northern Ireland Contact Tracing app, ensuring that the two systems can talk to each other and notify users of any Covid-19 exposure, regardless of which app they're using. Public health on the island is an all-island effort, and now people can be rest assured that their COVID Tracker app will continue to work anywhere on the island. Since the day of its launch, we have seen a great uptake of the app, with over 1.5 million downloads to date. If you have not yet downloaded the app, we would urge you to do so. This is just one simple way in which you can play your part and contribute to the overall effort against the virus. In particular, we need to do our very best to ensure that our children and young people can return to school in September, following months without the vital hands-on learning, stability and socialisation that only the school environment can offer. Please bear with us. We are at a critical stage, and what you do is as important as ever. No one part of the system can manage this disease on its own. Temporary Wage Subsidy Scheme. Over 69,470 employers are registered with revenue for the Temporary Wage Subsidy Scheme. An estimated 390,000 employees are currently being supported by the scheme, having received a subsidy in their most recent pay period. Today, Revenue has generated further payments to employers under the scheme of €28.8 million. The cumulative value of payments made to employers under the scheme is now €2.4 billion. This week, approximately 274,600 people who were unemployed last week received their weekly payment under the Covid-19 Pandemic Unemployment Payment Scheme. The overall value of the weekly payment is in the region of €85 million. In total, over €3 billion has been paid up to and including the 4th of August. Last week, approximately 8,300 people in receipt of the pandemic unemployment payment closed their claim because they were returning to work. Since the reopening, approximately 280,600 people have closed their claim as they have returned to work. If you're returning to work, you should close your claim on the day of your return. And to close your claim, you should log on to gov.ie and click on the link for Covid-19 Pandemic Unemployment Payment and follow the instructions. Businesses continue to engage with government departments and agencies in accessing the range of supports available to support them during the pandemic. Applications for the Restart Grant are at 45,372, with 35,544 of these approved, resulting in over $146.7 million in grant assistance being paid to small business. Applications for the Trading Online Voucher Scheme operated through the Local Enterprise Office network have now reached over 8,300 applications, with 5,600 approvals made to the value of $13.4 million. It was agreed this week that the suspension of redundancy measures relating to temporary layoff as a result of Covid-19 would be extended until the 17th of September. The suspension of these measures was introduced in March to deal with the Covid-19 emergency by ensuring that businesses would be able to maintain a link with staff that were temporarily laid off, thus preventing permanent job losses. The measure also ensured that businesses already badly impacted by the pandemic would not be overburdened with debt in relation to redundancies. The decision to extend the suspension until September will help to allow businesses to recover and reopen as soon as it is possible for them to do so. The extension of the duration of the Covid-19 enhanced illness benefit until 31st of March 2021 was also approved this week. This measure was extended in order to reassure workers who contract Covid-19 or who are medically certified by their doctor or the HSE to self-isolate that financial assistance will continue to be available to them in the form of the enhanced illness benefit payment. Last week saw a $500 million expansion to the Future Growth Loan Scheme, the government scheme to support SMEs, farmers and fishing. The additional funding will be provided by the European Investment Group. It will facilitate significant injections of capital for businesses looking to develop strategic responses to the changing business conditions brought about by the Covid-19 pandemic, as well as by Brexit. Loans of between €25,000 to €3 million are available at competitive rates for terms between 7 and 10 years, and further information on the Future Loan Growth Scheme and where to apply is available on gov.ie. Community measures and supports. The community call for run by the local authorities are still operating, and last week they received approximately 240 calls nationally and made approximately 100 follow-up calls to people who've contacted them. That's over 53,000 calls and 21,000 follow-up calls since the 31st of March. Helplines are continuing to operate from 9 to 5, 7 days a week, and if you need help, you can find your local helpline number on gov.ie. Earlier this week, the details of the $2.8 million in funding approvals to help rural towns and villages to adapt to the Covid-19 pandemic were also announced. The funding will benefit 106 towns and villages throughout every county in Ireland. This first tranche of funding under the Enhanced Town and Village Renewal Scheme recognises the need to support rural businesses and communities to rebuild in response to Covid-19. The funding will target measures that allow people to shop, work and socialise in safe ways. Practical examples for which the funding will be used include adapting community spaces, playgrounds and other outdoor areas for social distancing, widening walkways and footpaths to provide seating for shoppers, and providing sheltered areas outside local amenities. Enhancements to continue centres to allow for remote working. This is the first of several rounds of funding to be announced in the coming weeks, and it is likely that 500 towns and villages across the country will be supported in some way. Full details of the projects supported by the first round are available on gov.ie. A €2.5 million small-scale capital works programme has also been put in place for public libraries. This is to assist libraries across the country to adapt to Covid-19. Local authorities will be providing additional funding in that effort to the value of €280,000. Many libraries have had to make changes to how they operate in light of Covid-19. This funding will allow them to adapt to meet social distancing requirements and to provide additional remote working facilities. There are over 300 libraries across Ireland, and in each town and village they sit at the heart of communities. This investment will help transform libraries all over the country into modern and well-equipped facilities that will continue to play an important role in community activity for years to come. Arts and culture. In June this year, €25 million funding was made available in extra supports for arts and culture sector, which was and continues to be very badly affected by Covid-19. A further €31 million was also invested into the sector under the Job Stimulus Package. A number of measures were announced yesterday which will see this funding directed towards helping the arts and culture sector recover from the Covid-19 emergency. Specific measures include a further €1 million in grant aid to key cultural institutions in receipt of annual funding, a new €2 million audience re-engagement fund for small, regional and specialised museums, funding to support cultural projects with a significant cross-border element under the Cooperation with Northern Ireland Scheme 2020, €270,000 allocated to the Musical Capital Scheme administered by Music Network, Ireland's National Touring and Development Agency. Further information on the various supports available to the arts and culture sector are available on gov.ie. Children and young people. With schools reopening at the end of the month, many children will be making the big leap from preschool to primary school. This can be a daunting experience at the best of times for many young children, and particularly this year due to the Covid-19 emergency, many parents and guardians might be anxious for their child. With this in mind, the National Educational Psychological Service of the Department of Education has released a podcast offering tips and guidance on how to make this transition as seamless as possible for the child. And this podcast can be found on the Department of Education's Twitter page @education_IRL. International travel. It is still advised that the safest thing people can do at the moment is to stay home. We're asking Irish people to holiday at home this year and support our domestic tourism industry, which has been badly impacted by Covid-19. For those who are required to travel overseas, we're asking that you restrict your movements for a 2-week period when you return home. That is the public health advice unless you're travelling from one of a small selection of green list countries. As I mentioned earlier, coronavirus is still spreading across the world. Many countries which had previously seen the virus under control are now once again reporting an increase in cases. And as I said, in Ireland, our position is very delicate. It is important that we try to avoid the risk of importing the virus from other countries. For that reason, a number of countries which were citing an increase in cases of Covid-19 were removed from the green list of locations this week. As such, anyone arriving into Ireland from the following overseas location will not have to restrict their movements: Finland, Norway, Italy, Hungary, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Slovak Republic, Greece and Greenland. Covid benefits for those in direct provision. As I mentioned previously, the Covid-19 illness benefit is available to any person employed and self-employed who is diagnosed with Covid-19 who has been advised that they are a probable source of infection of Covid-19 and is self-isolating. As of this week, that will also include workers who live in direct provision. This will ensure that these workers can follow the relevant health advice in relation to Covid-19 with the same confidence that there are financial supports in place to assist them. In addition, with effect from this week, the pandemic unemployment payment is available to people living in direct provision centres, as well as applicants for international protection who live in the community outside the direct provision system. It is payable wherever the person meets the conditions of the scheme, which are they must have been in employment immediately before the 13th of March, have lost their employment as a consequence of the Covid-19 pandemic, and are not being paid by their employer. The decision to extend these benefits to applicants for international protection will not only allow these individuals to prioritise the health and safety of themselves and their communities, but will also provide support to those who have lost out on income due to the impact of Covid-19. And finally, as we face into another summer weekend, I'm sure many of us will be out about and hopefully enjoying the fine weather. In Ireland, we're lucky to have beautiful parks, forests, beaches and scenic locations right across the country, and we're really happy to see people enjoy these natural resources in a responsible way and in line with the public health advice. There has, however, been an increase in littering throughout the country in the last number of weeks. This week saw the launch of the Government of Ireland campaign to tackle a growing litter issue throughout the country in partnership with the Leave No Trace Ireland. So I want to take this opportunity to encourage everyone to be responsible in your outings and make an effort to keep our natural environment litter-free. And remember, if you love a place, leave no trace. Thank you.